Hi, everyone. I'm Betsy Billhorn. Welcome back to another episode of Under the Forelock. And today I am very excited to have Barbara Alexander join us. Barbara is the owner of Epona Ridge. She formerly was a change management and team performance consultant for Fortune 100 companies. Felt like she had kind of a sacred void in her life and rekindled her passion for horses and started Epona Ridge to really have this equine experiential learning, leading women on retreats, both with horses, but also for women to regain, kind of their joy and their empowerment and their leadership. So Barbara, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you as well. And I'm just going to do a little disclaimer. So Barbara and I actually know each other. I went on one of her retreats. And what I'm going to say kind of to lead up in the conversation on how we got here was, you had this retreat with Frederic and Magali Pignon, right? So for folks who don't know, we're one of the founders of Cavalia, the Cirque du Soleil kind of equine show. They do Equi and other Liberty shows. They're very well known. And I was very, very excited to do the Liberty training. And I show up in the south of France with you guys, and I'm like, okay, and it's a little bit of a woman's thing, whatever. And it ended up being a very, very profound experience for me, both as a professional and as a woman, and also in my horseback riding. So is that kind of a common experience? Like, talk to me about that equine experiential learning and what typically happens.
Well, there's two groups of people that usually come to me. One is the more maybe not horsey people. They maybe don't have a horse, maybe loved horses when they were young, but are really looking for that deeper connection within themselves and the personal growth work that comes from the equine facilitated experiential learning. Then the other side came from this US tour I started doing with Frederic and Magali that was with horsey people that were there for training. And lo and behold, and it's a really beautiful story, is we find that the deepest relationships come when we can be authentically who we are and relate not on a one-way kind of a training scenario with our horses, but when we open our hearts to more of a two-way conversation and really start becoming a co-creator of what we are to do together and all of the possibilities we can have with our horses, but with ourselves. And through who we are with them, we build a trust on a whole different level. It's so far beyond anything I ever learned in horsemanship training. And so, yes, it was a surprise for you and a lot of people,
Yes.
But there's this spiritual side that is incredible.
Yeah, and so just to go down that path just a little bit more, I mean, I think what I found very interesting about the experience was that also, when you're working with horses at Liberty, there's a profoundness that Frederic and Magali have that I think that kind of organically happens as well. So I'm just curious, you guys met, and then how did you end up developing the program? Because it works very seamlessly, right? So we would have the training sessions and I wouldn't say it was practical tactile. It was as far as Liberty training, but there were things that Magali and Frederic were talking about from a leadership and energy perspective and working with a horse. And then we were also having sessions with you where we were working with a horse in a very different way, but I would say equally profound. And I still use actually some of those techniques when we talked about the approach and recede, right? And the boundaries. And have found that to be incredibly useful, especially, I was riding a new horse today, right? And used that just very, naturally. So can you expound a little bit on how you guys developed that and how it works well together in this situation?
Well, it's funny because we didn't really develop it together. We kind of discovered each other. It was, they have been just incredible teachers and trainers and working with horses their entire lives. So a lot of their skill is innate. I mean, they're beyond any trainers I have ever known ever. And I would not be doing what I'm doing with a trainer because what I do is for humans. it just so happens that what happens to the human after I'm working with them puts them in a position to go so much farther in the equine training pieces. So this is what we found after now, many years of working together, is that it really affects the human's energy, their vibration, who they are in space and time with all other beings, whether it be human or horse. So it just exponentially shifted the experience for people that then went on to figure out how to actually work with their horses in a training capacity.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, and I had the breakthrough the other way, right? Where, we used, the horses and this gets more, and I think into the equine experiential, right. And helping women find their empowerment. But, without going in too much, right. Just because I don't want to break the privacy of that moment. But there was a very profound moment for me just in the boundaries and being with a horse and having to, face some pretty significant stuff, I think. And then to be able to get that out and to release that and to really be like, okay, we're done. Right. And do you find, in the other work that you do, right, without Frederic and Magali, your other retreats, how the horses facilitate that with other women and finding that empowerment. I found the empowerment, but I think there's also a leadership aspect as well that I think some women struggle with, right?
Yes, and this is, if I kind of bridge between the standard practice of leadership training and women in leadership. And I, for 20 years, was in the business of that kind of thing, of leadership training and consulting and supporting improved behavior and performance. And what I found was there's a tremendous lack of real shift, real change that happens for someone, because so many of us are playing the part of what's accepted in the business world, right?
Can I tell you how many of those I've gone to?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you do it to please your boss and okay, la, 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 let's do those exercises. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So, the real key is, do you want to have a real authentic relationship? That's the first question. And if you don't, that's fine. Go, do whatever you do. But if what you're wanting is to live more in the authentic, genuine, have a real connection that makes a difference in people's lives, whether it's your peers, coworkers, whether you're management and your staff, whether you're in a relationship with a horse or your friend or your spouse, it's all the same. For me, the big thing was to realize I wasn't living two separate worlds. Here I am at work, here I am as a Barbara Alexander human being,
Yeah.
And this is what was tearing me apart inside, and where I had my own unraveling, I guess, so to speak, is I realized I was winning all these accolades, but inside I felt like I was dying. I felt like who I really was confused, because I was doing well at work, but I was not feeling like my life was making a difference. Like I was selling the training and working with the training and consulting, but it wasn't shifting people's lives. So I, in my own cathartic experience, similar to your experience and everybody else's that goes through this, is it exposes whatever gaps are going on, the things we've kind of shoved down, the stuff we've put on the back burner, or we think we've dealt with it when we were young or whatever. And I'm not a therapist. Let me get that straight to begin with.
Yeah.
I'm really good on, I shouldn't say only, at facilitating and holding my space, my energy, in a way that allows another person to be fully vulnerable and safe in an arena with a horse, and then this magic starts to happen. and it's not woo-woo kind of a thing. It's truly what's happening. And with every person in your environment, especially having horses, there's something that happens on the inside of your body.
Right. Yes.
That when you're with the horse, there's some kind of a grounding, if you are okay with that word, a sense of realness.
Yeah.
And go ahead. What you
Oh, because I was going to say, there's that cliche out there that, the horse is a mirror, right?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
not, that's really true. I mean,
Yeah.
as the facilitator side, I see it all the time. I've had thousands of women come through these programs, and I can watch how the horse behaves with somebody. And I can see, and this is how they expose those gaps. How they behave with this other being is directly in response to the energy you're bringing to the relationship. So here's the key. If you could learn to work with and modulate your energy based on who's in front of you. So if you have a timid horse, if you're working with horses, if you have a timid horse, you have an aggressive horse, your energy needs to shift appropriately for you to have a healthy relationship, right? And when it comes to taking the next step of really wanting to figure out, gee, is there something in my life that's blocking me from being totally present? Being able to be who I authentically am, who I genuinely want to be. Horses will bring that to the surface quickly. I say it's like 6 months of therapy in one session. And it's pretty painless, wasn't it? Pretty painless for you?
Not really. Not really. I didn't expect, it was, I would say it was probably, I don't want to say 6 months. I would say like at least 6 years of therapy. But you're right. Like the interesting thing to watch was we used the same horse, right? And we had, I think, 4 people, and to watch that same horse interact with the other 3 women in my group in completely different ways, and everybody had something very, very different. Was really, really interesting. And, and then afterwards, the horse was just kind of like, okay, and we're, and so it doesn't, next, let's go. Right. But, as you were talking, one of the things that kind of came to mind, and I had this flashback of, you see this happen at the barn a lot, right? So we have women who come to the barn, and maybe they are not really in touch, right? And that we have corporate jobs, or we're moms or whatever, and we're coming into the barn, and this is supposed to be our happy place, right? This is where I'm supposed to be relaxed, and I'm having a relationship with my horse, and I'm doing that on purpose. And then the horse doesn't stand still, or they don't trot when I ask them to trot, or whatever it is, they embarrass me. And I can't tell you how many women I see just have rage, right? And sometimes it's held down. Other times, I just had this flashback of this woman who, super nice woman, and her horse, I don't know, did something to embarrass while she was waiting to go in the arena, and she just turned around, wham, just whacked that horse with a crop one time. When, oh God damn, what did it, right? And boom, it was like this rage just came out, and I was just like, wow, right? But I felt it, right? I think that's a common experience for women, right? So is it partly because we have this disconnect, right? Where, like you said, there was the barber that was at work, and then there's the barber that's not at work. And do you think that that's part of the issue is, in our lives, we absolutely compartmentalize and cut off, and then we get in these situations with our horses?
I think you're very much right on with that we become disconnected from ourselves. And so therefore our tolerance and patience and ability to cope and assess a situation and respond appropriately is totally off, because we just don't have the bandwidth. Mm-hmm. We just don't. We get, we become reactive. And I'm sure that person, if she were videotaped and saw her behavior, would be mortified.
Oh, I know she would. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And inside it feels horrible. And I think that this is a key thing. We've kind of shut down the red flags that we have in our life, telling us that there's something that needs to be addressed. And so it has no other option but then to turn up the volume. And you see people ending up with breakdowns, with sickness, with low ability to fight off disease. Their immune system gets depleted because energetically they're in a constant fight or flight. Their adrenaline is constantly going. So they don't have that ability and balance, as I was referring to earlier, to really access all of the intelligence that they normally would have. And that comes from those gaps I was talking about, the things that we're stuffing and putting on the back burners, that if we actually learned how and felt safe enough to live from that place of vulnerability and openness and curiosity about things that happen, rather than response, reactive, knee-jerk reactions in some cases, life would be so much better, so much better.
And I know, like, you know, and it's not just women. I mean, we're talking about women right now, but
Right.
I know this is for men too. But
Sure.
I think people, you know, we want so much. I think the horse we assign a lot of spiritual, right, and a lot of, you know, all, and we talk about this relationship in this very profound way. And I think we go there to try and have that, but we're disconnected, right?
So
and
here's
it's the cycle, yes. Right? You know?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So here's what's happening there. So we go to have this spiritual thing that we have felt, this grounding thing, this calmness that we can have with our horse. But when does that happen? It doesn't happen when the horse does what we're supposed to do and, you know, does the piaffe just perfectly, or does whatever, you know,
hits the jump on the right stride, right, whatever. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It happens when we're doing nothing, when we're brushing, when we're letting the horse graze, when we're sitting in the pasture. You know, for those of you who don't sit in the pasture,
yeah,
there is so much to be gained by the nothingness of connection. Just watch horses together in a herd. Healing happens with each other, and the impact, physical impact they have, is incredible on us if we allow it to happen. But so many of us have a one-way, you know, get her done kind of attitude. So we go to the barn with the intention of having this spiritual connection, and it starts with getting the halter, put around, you know, cross ties, get them groomed, get them tacked up, and get out there and accomplish something for today. And then repeat it, repeat it, repeat it, repeat it. Okay, now put them away. And
yeah,
that just, it's no fun for anybody. It becomes no fun. It becomes not inspirational.
Well, and I think also too, because there's the time watch, right? You know, I know I felt that pressure, right? So you're either coming from work and you're just like about the whole day, and then, you know, you're assigning all this to your horse, like, well, I'm going to go there and my horse is going to love me. Or I can tell you how many times I've gone to the barn after a bad experience or bad day and thinking, oh, well, you know, Dory's going to give me snuggles, and that's the day she's in heat. That's the day that she doesn't want to be groomed. That's the day that, you know, she's girthy or whatever. And, you know, it's funny how that mirror shows up, right?
Yes.
Like, you know, like, okay, well, now what am I going to do? Am I going to become enraged about that? Or am I going to have to get my collective, you know what, together, calm down, and maybe today's not a good day to ride, right? You know, or maybe we take the girthing a little bit slower, we use a lot of candy or whatever, right? But it's that time. I think there's also that time element, right? Where, like you said, where I got to get all this stuff done. And then the horse becomes another tool. Goals. Yes. Goal orientation. Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
Now there's the topic.
Yes. And I think it's a true topic. I think whether or not you're an amateur, you know, you're an ambitious amateur rider and you want to show, or you're a trail rider, or, you know, hey, I just want to have a great relationship with my horse, but it's all goals, right? I'm going to have a good relationship with my horse. We're going to have a great trail ride. You know, I'm going to go win this, you know, high point championship at blah, blah show, but it's all goals, right? And I think that's where the disconnect
your
is.
Day.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, even your day can be a goal. I've got, let's see, what time is you? I mean, here's what you just did. What time is it? How much time I've got to get out there, get this done?
Yes, exactly. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
yeah.
So I would offer that the shift there would not be about the goal for the day. It would be about going and being and seeing what is to unfold. You know, you can have a dream for what today might bring, but you have to get there first. It's like a relationship with a loved one.
Yeah.
You have to see each other and be together first and see what's possible for that day, what sounds like fun. And if I'm on a time schedule, am I a fun friend? Gee, okay, I've got 5 minutes. Let's have a cup of coffee together, quick.
No, never. Yeah, no, exactly. But we do that to our horses, right?
Yeah, we do.
Yeah. And then we wonder why, when we get to the barn, that they're running to the back of the paddock, or, you know, they face their head in the corner and show me your butt, and, you know, all that kind of stuff. So what, you know, what advice would you have for, say, the person who's watching the show and it's like, I want to have a deeper connection, right? And I mean, there is, I'm going to be a little provocative. I mean, there is an element of time, and we don't have 4 hours, right? You know, and sometimes we do, you know, I have time in the morning and I have a call at 9 o'clock, right? You know, and, but how would I incorporate that, that concept of not having time, but within time? And maybe I'm just being ridiculous, but
I think you're being very realistic. I think that that's how we live our lives in these segments.
Little chunks. Yeah.
And if you have a segment, and that's all you have is a segment, first of all, I would say the most important thing is you get you right.
Yeah.
And in order for you to be right and to be the kind of person that your horse wants as a friend and a companion and a confidant, somebody to trust and love and be loyal to, you have to earn that. And you have to earn that by finding your own balance first. So first off, I say is you have to work on your own practices of self-balance, inner balance, and how you get that is a whole different thing away from horses.
Right.
So that's like number one. Second, when you go to be with your horse, go with an open heart of what's possible for the day instead of an agenda and goals of what we're going to get accomplished. Now, to some, that seems like an impossibility. And there's those that literally live their life with a one-way relationship of here's what we're going to do, here's what I'm going to teach you, here's how you're supposed to behave. And when you say, no, I don't like it, you know, and it's not two-way of when you say no, oh, why? What's going on for you today? Is something hurting that I'm missing? Is there something I need to know? You know, are you having a bad day? Did you wake up on the wrong side of the stall? Like what? It could be that something is coming up emotionally for the horse. And if you're not present for the two-way conversation and you're not there to be their person, you're there to be their teacher, their controller, their dominator, they're going to check out mentally. They're emotionally and mentally going to behave if you're strong enough, dominant enough, but probably disassociate and not have the depth of connection you could have. So if you have a limited time, I would say you go in with the open heart and you go in with the dream of what could be, what a possibility of what we might get to do today. But with that openness of what do you think? How is this a good day to play this way? What do you need today? And be conscious as you're tacking up. Look in their eye. Check into their heart, just like you would a friend. I would say shift the way you're looking at things, and what's going to happen will shift in what you get in response.
You know, it's so interesting because, and I have this conversation all the time with people, right? You know, there's things that we do with a horse that if you were to just take the word horse out and put person in, we would be horrified, right? You know, I mean, you wouldn't whip somebody because they didn't stand exactly still for 5 minutes. I mean, you would just never do that, right? Or scream or slap or punch them because they brought their leg up because they're uncomfortable, right? And, you know, and I'm talking about some extreme stuff that I've seen at the barn, but, you know, but your point about the coffee is right. And I have been guilty of that. I'm coming in the barn, I'm going to do my thing. Damn it, you know, stop. We got to do this, right? You know, and if I had done that to you, if I had done that to another friend, you know, that probably would have been the last coffee. Right. And, you know, and honestly, spending that, I don't know, 5 minutes, it makes a really big difference. Right. And I've used some of those practices with Dory because she's, you know, Dory, very opinionated mare. She's chestnut Arab mare. I got the trifecta. And so she, you know, with her, it's always a conversation. But, you know, if I take that extra time and I say, okay, all right, you know what, I get it. Right. We're a little about this particular thing. But what's interesting is when I come back towards the end of the riding session, right, then either two things happens. One, either she's like, okay, I'll offer that, or if I ask for it, we'll do it. Or she will actually do something more like more advanced, or she'll offer something better or brighter or more artistic, or right, things I didn't know she had in her. But because I think we didn't have that fight or that energy in the beginning, it was like, okay, it's almost like a trust thing, right? Like,
Yeah.
I trust you not to push me, right? And so now I'm going to give you more brilliance, you know, towards the end, right? Because you haven't done that. And I would say to people too, it's not being lazy, right? You know, I'm not riding my horse at the walk all the time and poking around, right? You know what I mean? So, but yeah, I've definitely seen that. And I'm sure you've seen that as well with other women that you've worked with. So
I have. The interesting thing from my perspective is, now keep in mind, people don't bring their horses to me.
right.
I end up in the US tour, I'm working with people with their horses for sure.
Yeah.
But in these retreats, and like you saw when you were with me in France, a number of people going in with the same horse and the horse behaves differently. That isn't because of the horse's energy, as a person walking in.
Yeah.
And this is a piece we can't forget. This is the piece that when we lack our own inner balance, and the horses, as I said, can bring that to the forefront in the most incredible ways when we allow that experiential piece to happen. But when we really allow ourselves to be vulnerable to the point where if there's any gaps, I want to know what they are, because I want to be the best human I can be for my horse, for my friends. But guess what? It's also for ourselves, because I'm guessing that person you were referring to earlier probably was just as hard on herself as she was on her horse.
Yeah, she is. And, you know, and that's very interesting, because she is, you know, I since we've all, you know, that barn ended up closing and we've all gone our separate ways. But my recollection of her is, you know, she was very well put together. You know, I think she had very high expectations about
Herself
and how she presented to the world and what she was doing, and, you know, super nice lady, right? But you're right. And I think that when her horse kind of went out of frame on that, right, it was almost, well, I mean, it wasn't almost, you could feel that she felt it was a reflection on her, like she was a bad horse owner, a bad rider, whatever, you know. And it was something pretty minor too. I mean, it wasn't, you know, I mean, look, I've had my horse like rear up in the aisle. I know what that feels like, but it was like not even close to that. But I think you're right, you know, is, you know, and it was funny because I had another trainer. I'd be curious to see your opinion on this, but I had another trainer and she was telling me, she said, you know what, we can tell when people bring their horse to the barn and we see the horse, we can tell exactly what the rider's like. Or when we start talking to the owner and before they bring their horse to the barn, we can almost tell you exactly what's going on with the horse and what the temperament of the horse is and the training issues are with the horse.
Yeah.
So I'd be curious, because that's an energetic thing. And it sounds like what you're talking about as well.
Yeah. And so many people go through horses because they think this is a problem horse. This is a problem horse.
Yeah.
And the question is more, what am I doing? How can I do it differently? How can I be a better human in this relationship? Which doesn't mean let the horse walk all over you.
Right.
It means having healthy boundaries. And let's take this over to the human side. How can I be a better friend? How can I be a better partner? How can I be a better leader or, you know, employee? It isn't about letting others walk all over us or mistreat us and just, you know, being happy all the time. It isn't that. It's being very clear on what's mutually respectful to each other, you know, and setting good boundaries with expectations of success and joy, you know, not just get her done.
Yeah. And that's not a kind of a joyful place. So I want to talk a little bit about, you said, you know, hey, if you're not right in yourself, like, you know, you need to get grounded and centered and do that. Right now. But the interesting thing though, too, is, right, we have this experiential thing. You do have these spiritual retreats, you know, and empower women in their leadership and their joy. And so like, how does that work then when we integrate that back with the horse? Or, is that because on these retreats, you've got the horses there, so it's kind of a parallel and two-step process where we can integrate that right away versus, hey, for viewers out there, well, okay, I'm going to go work with somebody and get grounded, and then I'm going to try to apply that in the barn. Like, how does that work on the retreat?
So on the retreats, the experiential learning is all about you. It isn't about training at all.
Gotcha.
The ones getting trained are us.
It's me. Yeah. Yeah.
And the horses are my co-facilitators, and they're helping. They're helping us see without an ego what's going on, right? So otherwise I could be lecturing and be totally boring, but you'd hear the information, but you wouldn't get it on the cellular level that you do in experiential training.
Right.
So,
right.
What happens in the retreats is, first of all, you start to let go of all the crap we carry around with us that keeps us blocked off from really learning. And you just learn how, like I learn what you do. I ask you, what is your process to find inner balance? And people are like, I do yoga, or I run, or I try to meditate, but it never works. I get that a lot, especially if you're a A-type personality. You can't be quiet. It's too scary. Got to keep doing.
Yep.
So I work on the processes of helping somebody get to that point. I provide all kinds of opportunities and experiential learning pieces for you to learn how to tune in. Like, some people aren't even aware of intuitive connection or intuitive intelligence. They're so far in the left brain side that they're intellectual about everything. If I do A, B, and C, I'm going to get this, and they don't understand that it's a combination of all those energies, of the intellect, of the spirit, and of the energy, the physical response. And the horses are picking up on our physical energy, but they're also picking up on our intent. And you mentioned a little bit earlier, if I go in there and I've had a bad day, right? For you to be able to even conceive of the fact that you could tell your horse, you're having a bad day. I had a bad day. It really sucked. I didn't get along with this person at work, and they really offended me or hurt my feelings or whatever. Or I'm just feeling down, or in today's world, I'm scared. There's things going on out there that I don't understand. It's pretty amazing to see, first of all, how the horse can become present almost eye to eye into your soul. But if you can't be whole and present like that, they are not going to be. So it's really owning what's going on for you, and to be willing, I use the word vulnerability, be willing to take a look and know that if you can get clear of whatever's blocking you in your life, that it's going to be so much better. It's going to be, you can have this kind of openness and connection with everyone, your horse and everyone. But this is where real balance comes in, is really being able to be honest with yourself. And it's not like you do a self-diagnostic. It's not like that. It's, are you, you need a coach. Yeah, because I can't think of anybody who did it alone. I tried to do it alone. When I had my split personality thing, when I finally got that I wasn't me, I had become this, automated response. And I was, the job was no problem because I've done it for so long, but there was no inspiration in my life. Like, I didn't even understand that was missing. Because I was doing what I was supposed to do. So most of us, like this woman you mentioned, she's had a pattern of behavior, being hard on herself. She probably had family that was hard on her. She's probably hard on her kids. She's hard on her horse, and her horse is wound tight because there is no ease together. There's no co-creation together. She doesn't, if I said she doesn't love herself, that's kind of what's happening there. She isn't kind and gentle and open and supporting of herself. And if you are, you would be that with those around you.
Yeah. And but that, level of vulnerability too is so scary, right? I mean, I had a moment this morning, actually, like I mentioned, I was riding a new horse, and I had a tough couple of 3 days, right? Not related to horses at all, but right. And I'm a schoolmaster, and it's my first day. I have never ridden this horse ever, right? And I would say on the balance, objectively, I had a really good ride, right? But subjectively, I was not feeling it. And I was feeling like a failure, right? But I think the difference was, and I knew, and I could feel it welling up, like I was going to start crying. And I just like, oh my God, I'm so done with this, and it was funny because my coach picked it up. We were at the end, and she's like, what's going on? And I would tell you, probably a year ago, I would have just been like, nothing. Right. And I would have gotten off the horse, and that would have been that. But, to be that vulnerable and say, look, what I'm feeling right now is I don't want to do this anymore because I feel like I'm a failure, and that spurred a very interesting conversation with her and I. I think it deepened our relationship between, coach and rider. But the very interesting thing about that too was, so this horse doesn't like to be touched on the face, right? And she said, he will only let you if you're a special person. He has to trust you. He has to get to know you, but you're not like, and I know that, right? And we were walking out and talking about, what I was going through and why I was feeling this way. And I had just reflexively reached up to pet him on the face, and he totally let me just kind of go like this. So I think that's really interesting how he picked up, right, the fact that I was even able to be vulnerable, and it wasn't about him, it was something else, and talking to my coach about it. But then that moment I could actually pet him on the face, and I didn't even think, like, it was just, not like, oh, I'm going to pet this horse on the face. Right. Yeah. But, and that was a 5-minute conversation. This wasn't an hour that I was like, completely losing my mind. But I don't like, I think the point of that is to what you were saying is, I don't think that I would have had the depth of conversation with my coach. I don't, we figured out other tools for me to move forward. I may have quit or said, okay, I don't want to do this goal anymore. I don't want to go to this level anymore. Right. But I felt actually better afterwards. Like I felt more inspired to do it than, so I think that vulnerability is really key, and I don't know how much, this horse facilitated that, to be honest with you. He just gave me a mirror. Yeah.
You shifted, and that made it okay. And I mean, I see this over and over again in the vulnerability piece. I also want to say, being in the position I'm in, where I am facilitating groups of women, lots of women, I see those that have the vulnerability thing down, and they don't care. They just want to be better. They don't care. They're like, you know what? Show me where I've got a gap, because I want to fix it, And I think, that is so cool. That is so cool. And then you got the others that are like, no, I've been doing this a long time, and I really don't have to go back to square one. I just don't want to have to start over. I'm better than this. And, I should be doing this better. And I see how hard we make it on ourselves, how we beat ourselves up. So until we let that part go, we can't be present to make these gargantuan shifts and leaps in our life, you know?
Yeah, no, it's so true. So on the retreats though, too, right? I mean, I think we've talked, there's been like a really profound shift. And so that's a combination, one, of working with a horse, and then also working with you. But, it's a group of women. And so there's also that energy as far as the women are concerned. And there's kind of that special thing going on, plus the horses. So, do you see a difference like in the clinics where it's kind of more one-to-one, or, people aren't there for 5 days in this kind of, I don't want to say intense, but, it's that's a very ripe environment, right? For that kind of profundity versus, hey, I'm going to trailer in for this clinic, and here's Barbara, and here's Frederic, and here's Magali, and, go to this arena, go to that arena, right? Like, do you see that kind of profundity in that kind of place as well, or?
Yeah, that's a really good question. The
Yeah,
interesting thing, especially working with horse people now, not women that would come to retreat, because those that come
exactly.
to retreat are in it for, like, give it, bring it on, and
Yeah, yeah.
I want to take my life to the next cool level, right? The ones that come for the clinics are more like, who are you? What are you doing? How is this valuable to me? So they get thrown into a more of an in your face risk, and they can watch and see other people walk in and get slammed by the horse, not physically, although in some cases it is interesting how aggressive some
Mm,
people are, and the horse, given the opportunity to say no, I hear that, given the opportunity to say no to an aggressive person, become either aggressive or take off.
wow.
It's because they're not tied down. There is no force and control. And if, I've had people come in that have been in other well-known natural horsemanship kind of trainers and come into my horses who've been doing experiential learning for 15 years now. And they already know they can say no. In fact, they know they love their job and they love working with people. They just, they get all like, I can tell. And at any rate, when someone comes in and tries to pull these behaviors that is supposed to get X response from the horse, they deliberately, it's almost, comical to watch how clear and precise they are with, you're not dominating me. If you don't shift your energy, we aren't co-creating together. We can't
Wow.
possibly. So, yeah, it's kind of a in your face with horse clinic type situations,
Mm,
but it almost needs to be, because I think people that are coming in for a clinic, they really, they've got lots of other training going on. And there's this evaluation thing of, how is this going to make a difference in my life? And when they see that on the front end, it's like, oh my gosh, like I didn't even think of it that way. And so, yeah, it's cool, but it's not the profound personal growth. It's the shocking awareness of, oh, what have I been doing all these years? Oh my gosh, I didn't even understand this.
yeah, that, and that's really interesting. And I would say also too, the clinic environment, because I've gone to a lot of clinics, is there's a subtle, kind of looking at other people, there's a subtle competition that goes on, right? Oh, well, she rode this so much better, that person has, really nice britches or whatever. I mean, there's all that little bzz, bzz going on underneath too. So,
Yeah.
but the thing that I found, and I'd be curious to ask this question is, especially with the clinics with Frederic and Magali and the ones that you're doing in the States, and, okay, so now I have this first stage, I would almost say, of like, I've just kind of gotten like that, glass of cold water thrown in my face, like, oh my God. And then I think that pretty much everybody in the retreat that I went to, I think with the exception of me and maybe one other person, had not been to the clinic. So it sounds like there's that awakening, like, whoa, and then there's that investigation and wanting to go deeper. Is that a pretty common thing that you see?
It
The
is.
outcome?
It is.
Yeah.
I find that in my retreats as well, just the retreats, once you come to one and you learn about how good that feels, coming home to yourself without all the pretense. See, what you explained is how most people come into, especially clinics, but into the world, really, into their work environment, is noticing and living in reaction to everything around them. And when you come to a retreat, whether it be, now, when I've done the US tour with Fred and Meg, they're 5 days. They're 5 days for the participant. The clinic part's only 2 days for people who are watching and auditing. But each individual in experiential unfolding needs time to let go of all the pretense. First needs to understand the pretense is there, because we don't think we have it. We don't even realize how much we live in reaction to everything around us. And when that gets let go, and then you learn to listen inside you know, when I took you through the body, and listen how the body talks to you, and then begin to be aware of how your body's talking to you, and then in relation to another from an intuitive perspective, because the horses aren't talking like Mr. Ed, you know, they're not telling you, you know, you're doing this and you've got that wrong, but they're showing us and they're telling us on an energetic level. And when we can move through all those stages together, it becomes something totally different. It becomes this potential. And if you are goal oriented, or you want to do something, and again, back to the horse, as a training perspective, when you've got that trust with each other, you don't ever want to break that. Like learning how to pull your energy off before you've pushed over the line while it's still fun, so that you get a horse that is excited to be with you. Just think of your friend in that cup of coffee. Are they excited to be with you? You have to take care, you have to bring something to the table. You have to bring all of you to the table, not the part of you that's out here.
Well, or the part that's like, you're going to fit into my worldview, and so go do this. You know what I mean? Right. You know, and cause I, you know, again, all these things I've been guilty of. I think a lot of us who are writers have been guilty of, right. You know, and you should be doing the P-off right now, you know, or you should be jumping, you know, 3 feet or whatever. You know, why are you, you know, freaking out because the turkey flew out of the bushes, right. You know, and instead of just being, and again, I'll just go back to, if I took out the horse and put somebody's name in there, we would just say that is ridiculous.
Right.
You know, why would you do that? Or a child, you would never do that. Right. So you mentioned about the horses, your horses that you have, and you said that they were very excited, and, you know, and they've worked with a lot of women.
Mm-hmm.
How did these horses come in your life? And, you know, I think you have 4, right? Like, how did these become the teachers, right? Is there, you know, we've worked with different horses at Fred and Magali's, and the horse that actually we worked with was not, I think it was pretty brand new to the farm. But these guys are like your teachers. So how did they get there? Like, how did that happen?
Yeah. You know, I left the corporate world and went back to what my original love was when I was a teenager, and that was horses. And I had no knowledge of experiential learning. I didn't know what I was going to do. I was in this sacred void, and my heart was calling for a horse. And at the time, the towers had just gone down, so there was no flying anywhere. And of course, the horse I find, I had been checking out Andalusians, and on the Andalusian site, and a woman said, I know of one that's for sale, and this would be a great horse for you. And so I pursued it. And of course, I'm down in North Carolina, and my horse was up in Washington State in Seattle.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, so I got to see video of all of his movements and what he was doing, but I knew by watching. So that was one. Another was, you know, there were just freak things. Let me just put it that way. Freak things that we found each other, and they came into my life. But here's the thing I didn't know for the first 10 years I was doing this work, was that it isn't just my horses. My horses are masters at the work, and people who have come back here over and over, they can hear the horse telling them stuff like that they thought. The first time they came, they thought, what is this? You know, what do you mean? And then by like the 3rd or 4th time, it's, oh my God, like I just look at the horse and I'm getting what I need to know in that moment, which is the personal development piece. So they know that they can do this. Other horses, especially highly trained horses, a lot of them are shut down, unfortunately, and they want to know, what do you want from me? I can perform. I'm a good boy or girl, and I can do it. Or if you aren't a good person, I may give you trouble doing it, but I can do it. You know, they have that, this kind of a relationship. But what I found was I could go anywhere. Like that horse you're talking about was there for just 30 days. I think they'd only had it a month. And it wouldn't take its head out of the corner, and was standing with its head in the corner of the stall and didn't want interaction with humans at all. And we worked with that horse for several days. And by the end of that time, the horse was way more balanced emotionally. It was head at the door. It had a a significant emotional shift happen for the horse as much as for the people that were there going through those experiences, because we were being real with each other. Horses are always real, you know, if we allow them to be.
Right.
But because my horses have a voice, they know that they're the teachers from the get-go. Like, they've seen a lot.
So do they, you know, I'm just going to ask the question, do they get burnout?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So here's the deal with this side of the work. My number one priority is that everybody is safe and healthy and enjoys their work. We don't ever push beyond on a human or on a horse or on me. We don't go beyond what our inspiration is leading us to. So the horses, I always ask a person, like, I've got this group of horses, which one do you feel drawn to work with today? And who is your second pick? And then the horses are always free. They go up and down my mountain. I live on a mountainside. I've got a picadero, little indoor covered arena. And invariably, whoever the person picked is the horse that's presenting, is ready for us when we walk out there to go into the arena. They're like, they came up the mountain and there they are.
Wow.
So when you see something over and over and over again, you're like, okay, this is, they are understanding and we are communicating with them on some other level. And I want to be part of that. I want to have that kind of give and take on a regular basis. It's not animal communication. It's because I took a course in that, you know, and that wasn't it. This is something that develops when you have an open mind and heart to allow.
Well, I think it's almost, I mean, the way that I feel it is, it's like this intuitive knowing, and I don't mean it in the, like you said, it's not like in this psychic way, but
intelligence.
Like, it's an intelligence.
Intelligence.
Yeah. Because like I have it with my dog, right? You know, you just know, oh, he needs, you know, maybe he's not feeling well, or, you know, I know he's hungry before he's hungry. Maybe he has me trained and I just picking up subtle clues. I don't know. But even with my horse, that, yeah, she, you know, there's just this, we're getting to this point where I just know, like, I can walk in and I can tell she's not feeling well, or, you know, maybe today's not the day that we're going to do, you know, new movements or really school. And that's the day that maybe I want to go do a hack, right? Or something like that. But yeah, it's like this flash and you just know it, you know, and yeah, but it's getting there. And I think a lot of people resist that too, because it's like you said, you know, when we cut ourselves off and we're, you know, you were saying you're going through the motions. I'm in the corporate world where I'm watching out for like all the little things that I have to do. Those flashes of intuition, that's not part of the picture, right? It's not part of how I'm supposed to be, right? In this other way. So I think a lot of people have it, but they just discount it, right?
Yeah, it takes, it's an intelligence, so you have to develop it. And if you haven't taken time to develop that part of you, because you're busy on the intellect side, you know, or the training side, what teacher is going to teach me how to be better, do better?
Yeah.
Without developing your own intuitive awareness, you're missing a giant piece of the puzzle that you know, eventually we get.
Yeah.
On some level.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You know, and it's funny because like every guest I talk to, right, we end up coming back to these themes, right? Energy, intuition, right? Your spiritual, your centeredness, your groundedness, your consciousness, whatever you want to call it. That connection, right? And I think this is something that everybody's looking for, but you know, but it also comes back to real life, right? You know, I had a breathwork coach on the show, and what did we end up talking about? Leadership and connection and intuition, right? With the breathwork. So, you know, I think there's really a there, and we always come back to the same thing, but through different avenues, right?
Yeah.
Back to the horse. So. Yeah, it's very, very interesting concept. So Barbara, I appreciate the time. This has been an incredible conversation. And I always ask every one of my guests, what was kind of that aha moment in your life with horses that you would want to share with people?
The aha moment. was probably during one of my experiential pieces when I was first doing this work. When I watched a woman in the arena who was a corporate CEO. Actually, she owned her own business, and from New York, very powerful woman, very angry woman. And we had picked the same horse to work with. And I was on a retreat. And when she went in with that horse, I swear that horse was 20 hands. I don't think so, but I mean,
it was huge. Yeah.
Highly trained dressage horse. But he was running around this 60-foot arena and chest slamming and shaking the metal arena.
Wow.
And so she started, and she was a level something or other with some horse trainer. And she was copying what the horse did. And she would go run and jump up on the bullpen on this side. And then the horse would slam over there and she'd jump on it. And she came out saying something about her authentic power. And then it was my turn to go in. And I'm like, I think I need to pick a different horse. I was starting to feel like my heart was beating so in my ears. And I thought, I don't want to go in and have a confrontation. But I went into that arena with the coaxing of the coach that was there to ask me, what did I need to feel safe? Because safety is the number one most important thing. If I needed to be outside the arena to ask a question, and this is, you remember from the work I did with you, I got you to the point where you could actually ask a question about you and your life and what you needed to know. What was the most important thing you needed to know right then so you could go forward? So here's what happened for me. I walked in there with this massive horse still bouncing off of this thing, and I stood in the middle, planted my feet flat on the ground, took some deep breaths, breath work.
Yes.
Felt my head go, my focus went from my head and fear. And, I wasn't so much worried about my safety anymore because I had taken steps to feel safe to be in there. I had a crop with me if I needed it. Dropped my focus down into my heart and just imagine my heart energy opening up. And my desire with that horse was to truly understand what I needed to know about fear and power that was so offensive to me and what I had seen with this confrontation and anger in the previous. What was the truth underneath all of this? What was the key, the most important thing I needed to know for my life going forward? And I stood there breathing, and this horse had stopped. I could hear him, had stopped behind me and kind of walked over behind me, which I didn't so much know where he was in space. But I felt safe. I felt calm. And the overwhelming word that came into my mind and heart was the most powerful is love.
Wow.
With that, I felt the chest of this horse at my shoulders, and his head came down across my chest, right like this. And his head went from my head down to below my hips, of course, and just hugged me there.
Oh, wow. Wow.
It was incredible. So I knew from then on that I was on the right path.
Yeah.
This is what I needed. If I was getting those kinds of answers for my life, there was one direction I was heading, and here I am.
That's such I'm sorry, I'm just like a little speechless. Yeah, so I mean, it's just so powerful. And I'm just curious, was the woman who was in there before, did she see that interaction?
Yes, she did. Not only did she, but everybody in the group saw what had happened before me and had felt this woman's angry energy. And then what happened when I went in, everyone was in tears. I was in tears.
Wow.
It was so, when you say it's like an out-of-body experience, it's hard you can't make those things happen. But if you allow yourself to be open, and there I was vulnerable, like I didn't know, but I wanted to know with all my heart what I needed to go forward. And that was it. And that is the most powerful, was like, okay, rock back and breathe and hold this heart space, because that's what the world needs.
Wow. Wow. That is, I'm sorry. I'm still like, this is such a powerful, powerful thing, you know, to have that happen. And I had, you know, I had my own moments on the retreat, but, if people want to know what that's all about, I'm going to put in a little plug to go to one of our, well, maybe not, because then there would be no spaces open. I still want to go, but yeah, no, Barbara, you know, and this is a little bit of a shameless plug, but it was a very profound experience for me. And I highly, highly recommend it. And I have to say that after that, I mean, there were a lot of changes that I made, right, up to and including leaving and starting my own business. But my relationship with my horse changed a lot, and has continued to change, you know, over time, and become much, much deeper. So, I mean, there's, like I said, there's a there. I mean, this is real stuff, right? And you know me, I'm a goal-oriented person. But, you know, I'm like, if I could do it, anybody could do it. So, but yeah, Barbara, wow. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Yes. Yeah. And for those of you watching, in the show notes, if you want more information on Barbara's retreats, on her, you do facilitator training for this as well. And her other coaching and spiritual retreats, you can find that on her website, and I'll have all that information. And then, you know, I believe you're on social media as well, Barbara, so we'll put those links as well. So thank you again.
Oh, thank you, Betsy.
Really appreciate it.
It's been my pleasure to watch this whole thing unfold for you.
Thank you.
I can't thank you enough for all you're bringing to the world.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Barbara. Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.